This is 14.2, the 6-week training program, which is a comparison of two different clients, creating a program for both of them. So client 1 we have here is a younger person who is currently at college and trains for football twice a week. And he stated that his main aims were to improve muscular endurance and stamina. And he wanted a lot more strength in his lower body and some of his upper body as well. So here we've got the first session. Obviously we start with a warm-up to prevent any injury and to really warm the muscles up to get them ready for more strenuous activity. And then we're going into some weighted squats. Now, because he already does football training, he should have pretty strong lower body. So I thought by adding weights, starting with a 1.5 weight, 1.5 kilograms, that should make it slightly harder for him compared to what he already does. And then he also mentioned that he wanted to do some stamina or aerobic endurance based activities. So we've got 3 laps here at 60% of the maximum heart rate. This should help him increase his aerobic endurance because he's in that zone of his heart rate where he can still be improving, but it's not too intense that he can't do it. And bicep curls with some 3 kilogram weights, just to do a general all-rounder sort of thing for his body, so he doesn't just focus on the legs or just focus on the stamina. He'll have other things that he'll be incorporating in between. And then we've got a little rest section here, which is dynamic stretches for 3 minutes. The dynamic stretches is a reason I've chose that is because it will keep his body moving and it won't be too difficult for him afterwards if he just sits down for, say, 3 minutes. It might be difficult for him to find the motivation to get back up. So if he keeps moving, keeps the blood moving around his body, and it will keep his body prepared for what comes next, which is the 20 sit-ups that he's doing. He seems to be in pretty good physical condition as it is, so this shouldn't be too hard after the first part of the session, which is quite intense. This should maybe bring it back down a little bit. And then we've got a wall set whilst doing bicep curls, so this is training both sections of his body at once. Rather than just do one, he can do both in this, and he can incorporate this after the 6 weeks into his normal life as well. And then we've got the cool down, so we start with some star jumps and high knees back and forth for 10 minutes. Not too intense, just keeping the body moving to prevent lactic acid pooling in the muscles, which would, cause pain and discomfort afterwards. And then we've got some dynamic and static stretches for 5 minutes, just to really stretch and loosen his muscles up, so he doesn't feel extreme fatigue afterwards. This is in comparison to the last session we have here, which is at a first glance, obviously much more intense than the first session because we want that progression so he can actually see that he's improving. And so we've got some different activities here, so just to switch it up a little bit so he doesn't get bored. We start with some games to increase the heart rate, so that will just warm up the muscles, get him ready for exercise and get that heart rate going and get the blood moving around the body. And then we've got some dynamic and static stretches. These are, as I said before, to prevent injury. And then we've got a little activity here, which is transferring weights from one side of the room to the other in as little time as possible. This could be done with a partner, so it's more of a competition, keep the motivation there. And the weights will range from 5 to 15 kilograms, so that he could start with the smaller amount of weight and then build up to the highest amount of weights, so to show progression and make it a little bit more intense. And because he really wanted to do some aerobic endurance, we've got some continuous training here at 80 to 90% as compared to the 60% that was in the first session. And this time it's 5 laps, so by the end of the 6 weeks, this shouldn't be too difficult for him because the progression would have been quite steady and quite gradual, and it'll end on the hardest thing that you can do. And then we've got here a wall sit for 7 minutes, but just the wall sit because the continuous training would have probably tired him out quite a bit. And then we've got a little rest here, but reducing the rest as well so that he doesn't get used to too much rest, because during a football match it needs to be pretty constant and continuous, and there's little rest for them during games, so reducing the rest will also help with that, and doing some dynamic and static stretches will loosen up his legs after the high intensity session, half the session there. And then we're going to do some lateral raises and squats. So similar to the first one, where you can target 2 parts of the body at once. And that will be 30 reps as compared to 20 reps that he would have done halfway. And then 5 laps of running this time. At 80 to 90% of the maximum heart rate. So again, some more continuous training just to really target that aerobic endurance there. And then after that, the cool down will be some side steps and light jogging for 2 laps, and then we'll walk 1 lap. So that will really gradually bring his body down. So not to just stop immediately, that will gradually bring it down, relax him slightly, and then we'll head into the dynamic and static stretches. And that is that for the first client of the 6-week training program. And we've got client 2 here who's slightly older, has children, works, and has a lot more obligations. Also, this person had a knee injury, so any sort of impact on that may affect it and make it worse. So for the first session here, I would get him into a swimming pool where there's a lot less impact as compared to running on solid ground. The water will cause less impact and therefore it won't aggravate his injury. And we've got a warm-up here of some dynamic and static stretches. This would be done outside of the pool, just because it would be much easier rather than trying to stretch in a swimming pool. The warm-up here, we've got 4 laps of the pool. We'll do different ones here. So we've got front crawl, breaststroke, backstroke, and then back to front crawl again. That'll just have some variety rather than just doing, backwards and forwards of front crawl. It may get a little bit boring. And then we've got walking back and forth in the water here. Because he doesn't do any exercise currently and he has an injury, it's good to start off slightly slower and make it slightly easier for him. And then once he's done that, we'll go into some weighted water aerobics, which you can make very intense, but we'll start with some 3 kilogram weights this time. Just because we want to get him used to the exercise before we go all out with some high intensity exercise. And then we've got some continuous swimming here for 10 minutes using front crawl, backstroke and breaststroke, and that can be done at 60% of the maximum heart rate. This will just really improve his aerobic fitness, because he said he doesn't want anything specific, so we'll just give an all-rounder of weights and aerobic endurance. And then we've got 1 lap of just backstroke. That will just again, we'll do the same thing as the other one. Then star jumps in the water for 10 minutes. That will mostly work on muscular endurance, just because the sort of resistance that the water gives against that will be similar to if you were doing it in the gym. The resistance bands that you'd use could create a similar sort of effect, but obviously in the water it may be slightly easier. And then just the cool down, walking back and forth in the water for 3 laps, just, cool his body down, calm it down, just gradually bring it down rather than just stop altogether. And then dynamic and static stretches again, done outside the pool. And then the last session here we have, hopefully by the end of the 6 weeks, his knee injury should have healed up slightly. We would have kept him in the pool for the first few sessions, just so we don't aggravate his injury. So again, we'll start with some dynamic and static stretches, and then we'll go into some laps. So running, high knees, heel flicks, and quick steps, just to increase his heart rate and get his body ready for exercise. And then we'll do 25 weighted star jumps with some 3 kilogram weights. Now, because he's not in the pool anymore, this will be a lot harder, and 25 of those will increase muscular strength and endurance as well. And then we've got continuous cycling instead of just running, which again may aggravate his injury. So cycling is a lot less impact, but it's still very, very good for you. And that will really increase his aerobic endurance. So at 80 to 90% of his maximum heart rate, as opposed to the 60% that we would have done before. And then again, a little rest section here, dynamic stretches for 1 minute, reduce the rest so that he doesn't get too used to having too much rest. And then we'd go into some push-ups with 3 kilogram weights. So each time you do a push-up, you bring one arm up with the 3 kilogram weights, and that'll really just improve his strength and his muscular fitness. And then we've got the jogging here at 80 to 90% of his maximum heart rate. So This could possibly change depending on how bad his injury is, but doing the jogging instead of the running, it may be less impact. Yeah. And then we'll go into some sit-ups, 25 of those, and then burpees, just so it's an all-rounder exercise, so he can improve most of the aspects of his body, like he wanted before. And then the cool down, the 2 laps of light jogging with an additional lap of walking, so similar to what we did to the first client, just bring them down slowly, so it's not too difficult for them. And then we'll head to dynamic and static stretches to finish the very last session off.